Satoshi and I had what? All my well-planned action throughout the day turned out to have been nothing more than a reenactment of what Satoshi had done. Satoshi, had he really been in the same situation as I was now? The friends he had gotten along with had changed suddenly, and for no reason, at least none that I noticed, planned to kill him. Then, fearing for his life as I am, he got a bat to protect himself and carried it around every day to practice his swing. Then one day, suddenly, he transferred. My blood went cold, causing a prickling sensation to course through my veins. Starting near my heart, it radiated outwards from the top of my head to the soles of my feet, chilling every part of me without recourse. What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Was Satoshi still out wherever he transferred to? Was he the only one who would be able to understand me? Would he be able to tell me why it all ended up like this? More importantly, where did he transfer to? And what did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Before I knew it, I was at my front door. The frigid doorknob was hard to turn. Was nobody home? It wasn't that odd of an occurrence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the single key attached to my first sealed keychain. I stepped into the entryway. Just as I was about to take off my shoes, a chill ran down my spine. Someone had entered right behind me, like a classmate messing around, standing right up against my back. You're kidding, right? It had to be my imagination. Logically speaking, it was impossible for someone to be able to hide their presence within my personal space through the door. But there was undoubtedly someone behind me. Hey now, Keiichi. How do you know they're there, even though they're behind you? Because I could hear the sound of flowing hair. There's no other reason I'd hear that sound. That was the presence. Because I could hear the sound of them blinking. Keiichi Maibata, there's no way you'd hear that. My most base instincts were warning me of the presence. Common sense was telling me that it was my imagination. It was just my imagination. There was nobody behind me. I began to erase the mental image of an eerie figure standing behind me. But at the same time, I asked myself, if there was nobody, then what was I feeling? As an uncomfortable sensation crawled up my spine. Actually, wouldn't it be better if there was somebody there? If there was nobody there when you turned around, would you be able to accept that? I'd be able to answer all those questions just by looking behind me. But I didn't have enough courage to even do that simple task. Alright, I could try speaking to them. The person behind me might answer me. It was a random thought. I didn't care how I went about it, just so long as I didn't have to turn around. If I had calmed down and thought about it, I would have known that that wouldn't have solved anything.
どなたですか?
Who is it? I spoke in such a hoarse, broken voice that I couldn't believe it was my own. I could almost feel them contemplating their response. I felt it. There's no way I should be able to do that. Calm down, Keiichi. It's all in your head. That time, I was certain I heard it. As if hesitantly trying to answer my inquiry, I was certain I could hear the sound of somebody inhaling. I heard it. I heard it. I heard it clearly. It was a girl. A young girl. I didn't know who, but a tiny speck of courage in me, however reckless it was, inspired a primal yet fitting solution to this current predicament, a scream. All the force in my body released from my lungs and through my throat, ceasing all the thought processes in my head. Suppressing all my thoughts and emotions, I began to collapse like a house of cards, somehow managing to twist my body and look back as I did so. It was definitely there. Right there. Somebody was there. Until the moment I turned around, until I brought the area behind me into my field of vision, they were definitely there. Falling face up, my eyes traced the remnants of the presence suspended in the empty space. It couldn't be. They were invisible. They looked like they weren't there. But were they actually still standing there? As I screamed, all the emotions I was holding back burst free in a violent wave. However, I was decidedly calm as my emotional dam collapsed. The turbulent wave of pent-up emotions was skillfully diverted into a torrent of aggression. That emotion was definitely required to extricate myself from the bizarre situation happening right in front of me. In my state of heightened lucidity, I entrusted my body to the fury. The metal bat held firm in my right hand as if drawn there by a magnet. A mid-level sweep would be the hardest attack to dodge. I remembered reading something like that from a book about swordsmanship or something. I brandished my will to fight. The after-image of that amalgamation of metal flashed as it swung from left to right, beating against the entryway. The bat slammed into the right wall, the tip rebounding violently. Very calmly, I transferred the force of the rebound into a sweep of the left. The door of the shoe cupboard was split into pieces. Those two swings whiffed through empty space, but they seemed to have a great psychological impact on the enemy. I could feel the panic emanating from that space. The attack wasn't the only thing required. I extracted the bat from the cupboard it was embedded in and screamed as I spun my entire body around in a large arc. My scream shook the air, imbuing my ferocious swing with an even more destructive power. Crack! Without mercy or restraint, my violent strike, with certainly fatal force behind it, shattered the top of the cupboard. None of my attacks struck the enemy, but my ferocity had certainly seemed to impact them. Breathing heavily, my entire body soaked in sweat, the invisible enemy, there but not there, dispersed. When I was certain that the enemy had retreated, I locked the front door and latched the chain. No way, had it only feigned retreat, was now inside my house. Once again, I channeled my aggression and searched the house for the presence, but it was gone. I had succeeded in fending it off. At that moment, the tension drained from my body, and I let out a deep sigh of relief. All the emotions I'd been holding back chaotically merged together and began to flood out. A hodgepodge of fear, accomplishment, and disbelief all mixed together and began to flow through my body. Unable to deal with each individual feeling, I beat them all back with the strongest, exhaustion. Even in this moment, I remained composed. After checking that all the doors throughout the house were locked, I went up to my room on the second floor and closed the curtains. I straightened my back and tilted my head a little. After clearing my mind of all my idle thoughts, I managed to calm down even more. What was that at the front door? There was definitely something there. Thinking about it, maybe it was just an apparition I dreamt up in my confused state, but I really didn't think that was the case. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. Compose yourself. But no matter how calmly I thought about it, what just happened wasn't a figment of my imagination. It was obviously a supernatural phenomenon, and without a doubt, something was behind me. It wasn't some sort of illusion I saw amidst my confusion and disorientation. Proof? I had just one piece. When I asked, "Who is it?" they inhaled as if they were about to answer. That sound had clearly reached my ears. The situation I was in right now was still unclear. Either I'd been possessed by the supernatural phenomenon known as Oyashiro-sama's curse, or this was a ruse by the villagers who believed in it and were imitating it. Either way, their motives were unclear. The roundabout way it had been done was also still a mystery. If it was perpetrated by humans, that would mean admitting that it was Nana and the rest of them doing it, but it would be solvable. Oishi-san and the rest of the police would surely arrest my enemy. But if it was a manifestation of Oyashiro-sama's curse, I wondered what would happen. Oishi-san very clearly declared that curses don't exist. At that time, those words were pretty dependable, but as things were now, with the rising possibility that the perpetrators were not human, he suddenly seemed quite unreliable. If I told Oishi-san this was the work of Oyashiro-sama's curse, what would happen? I couldn't imagine his reaction, but it would go without question that a void would expand rapidly between myself and Oishi-san. With me having so few allies to begin with, and not being able to confidently declare whether or not this was a curse, there was no merit in doing that. I better keep the facts of what just happened at the doorway to myself. It would be better if I didn't add what happened here to the memo behind my clock. There was still the ever so slight possibility that I was actually confused when I thought I was composed, and I was just going berserk in the entryway. How wonderful would that be if that was what really had happened? I would be able to refute Oyashiro-sama's curse. But if I denied Oyashiro-sama's curse, then that would mean admitting that Nana and the rest were perpetrators. If I said that Nana and the rest weren't the perpetrators, then that would mean believing in Oyashiro-sama's curse. By denying both of those, I would be admitting that I myself was losing it. The three options from which I couldn't choose became a trilemma of sorts. They mixed together and formed a whirlpool in my mind, making my head spin. Once again, I straightened myself and leaned my head back slightly to cool myself down. Calm down, Keiichi. Accept what has actually happened as reality. Stop thinking of anything more than that. But I couldn't help but think of it. How wonderful it would be if it turned out I was delirious and everything up until now was a figment of my imagination. Oyashiro-sama's curse wouldn't exist, and I would still be bestest buddies with Onana and the rest. I would have to be crazy. That was the first time in my life I'd ever wished for such a thing. The phone rang noisily downstairs. Generally, there were no calls from me, so I never really answered the phone much. But since my parents weren't here, I had no choice. I squirmed off the bed and went downstairs.
もしもし、前原です。
Hello, this is the Maibara residence.
ケイチ、お母さんだけど。
Keiichi, this is Mom. I intuitively had a bad feeling about this. It was because I thought she was going to ask me to go out and buy some things. So I took the initiative.
何？
What?
別に俺、夕食はインスタントでもいいよ。
I don't mind having instant noodles for dinner.
まだいっぱいあったでしょ？
There's still a lot of them. The other day, we went out as a family and bought a whole case of cup noodles. I wanted to get a bunch of different kinds, actually, but they refused since the individual packs were expensive. So instead, I got a whole case of the mega-sized pork bone and ginger-flavored ones I liked. But my parents don't like strong flavors and didn't touch any of them, so the cupboards were still full of them.
だからさ、買い物に行く必要はないんじゃないの？
So you see, there really isn't a need to go shopping, right?
ケイチ、買い物のお願いじゃないの。
Keiichi, I'm not asking you to go
お
shopping.
父さんとお母さんね、お仕事の関係で急遽東京に行かなくちゃならなくなったの。
Both Mommy and Daddy have to go to Tokyo right now because of work.
え？
Huh?
今から？
Right now? This was really abrupt.
もう着いちゃってるの。
No, we're already here.
お昼には出発してたからね。
We left this afternoon. It's quite a distance to Tokyo from Hinamizawa. Gunning at full speed down the highway would still take 6 hours. Dad has a license, but since he doesn't like the highway, they likely took the train. It would have taken longer.
圭一もお父さんとお母さんの話を聞いてたからわかるかもしれないけど、お父さんのお仕事の契約がね、今ちょっとうまくいってないの。
I'm thinking you might understand since you heard us speaking last night, but it has to do with Daddy's contract. Right now, things aren't going so smoothly. Now that she mentioned it, I did remember that they talked all that time about how his job prospects weren't looking so good.
お父さんはそういうのに繊細な人だから、このままだとお仕事にも影響が出ちゃうの。
Daddy is really sensitive about things like this, so if we leave things as they are, it will affect his work. Part of my father's particular fragile artistic personality, his emotions changed as easily as the fall sky. You could also just say he couldn't take criticism.
でもそんなの電話でやり取りすればいいじゃないか。
But something like that can be done over the phone.
圭一、お父さんのお仕事なんだから、もうちょっと応援してあげて。
Keiichi, this is your father's job, so can you support him a bit, please?
とにかく電話よりも直接会って話した方が早いの。
Anyway, it's just faster to talk about it in
誤
person,
解もないし。
so there wouldn't be any misunderstandings. As their son, there is nothing more I could say once they started talking about work.
だから帰るのは明日の晩になっちゃうの。
So, we'll be back tomorrow night.
圭一、一人で大丈夫よね。
Keiichi, will you be fine on your own?
別に死にゃしないよ。
It's not like I'll die or anything.
圭一、死んじゃうなんて軽々しく言っちゃダメよ。
Keiichi, you shouldn't speak so lightly of dying.
心配事があったら相談してね。
If there's something troubling you, just talk to us.
母さん、きっと相談に乗れると思うから。
I believe Mommy will be able to help out. Yesterday, I did bring up if I died rather abruptly, so I suppose they were a little worried. But really, I was more depressed by the fact that nothing would be solved by telling them. But I didn't plan on dying. At least, not while I still knew nothing. I would never allow it.
死なないよ。
I won't die.
俺は
I won't.
あがいてでも生き延びる。
I'll survive, even if I have to gnaw my leg off.
そう。
Yeah.
じゃあね、
See you then.
明日の朝、ちゃんと起きるのよ。
Tomorrow morning, make sure to wake up
朝ごはんは食べてね。
and eat your breakfast.
お風呂と歯磨きも忘れないのよ。
And don't forget to take a bath and brush your teeth.
へいへい。そんじゃ。
Yeah. See you. The call ended like that. Sometimes my parents went off to Tokyo for business meetings. But Tokyo was far away. They normally did things by phone. The times they did go were normally planned out in advance. It never happened this suddenly. I couldn't say those circumstances didn't feel strange or rather unnatural. Anyway, I only needed to recognize the reality of the situation. That tonight, I was the only one in the house. That when my parents came back from work, I'd be gone, missing, vanished. Looking back on the series of events of the previous 5 years involving Oyashiro-sama's curse, it wouldn't seem that strange at all. Come to think of it, it was getting pretty late. I didn't think it was good that the only light on the whole house was from my room on the second floor. It was the same as broadcasting to the enemy that my parents were gone and this was their chance. First I ran to the living room, flicked on the lights, and turned the TV on to a reassuring volume. Next was the study. I similarly turned on some lights and some music. With this, from the outside, it would look like my parents were here. Once again, I went through the house, checking to see if there was anything left unlocked. When I saw the veranda and the laundry still hanging out there, I went pale. That would have made it too obvious. I needed to take it down. I snatched down the laundry haphazardly and erased all traces that my mother wasn't there. It should be fine now. Ah, the garage! They hadn't gone all the way to Tokyo by car, but they had gone up to Okinomiya Station. The garage was empty, wide open, and in plain sight. This was not good. I panicked and rushed out to the back to close the normally open garage door. Should be fine now. I needed to get the paper. Mom always got the paper, since they left in the afternoon. The evening paper was still out there. My premonition was correct. I pulled out everything from the mailbox and dropped it in the entryway. With this, for sure this time, it should be fine. Come to think of it, leaving the cupboard busted like that from my little freakout was kind of bad. I'll just say I tripped over and fell, and the bat I was holding smashed into it. Even so, just leaving it in its current state wasn't good. I should clean it up a little before Mom got back and scolded me. I remembered that there was a broom and dustpan in the closet. As I was going to get them, the phone rang once again.
もしもし、前原です。
Hello, this is the Maibara residence.
あら、圭一くん
Oh, is this Keiichi-kun?
お母様はいらっしゃいますかしら
Is your mother around?
今ちょっといないんですけど。
She isn't here at the moment. You idiot, Keiichi Maibara. Don't reveal that your parents are gone. You can follow up still. Calm down and take care of it.
すぐに戻ると思います。
I think she'll be back soon. This wasn't a good response either. Now they might say they'll call again, or to tell her to call them when she comes back.
なら、結構です。
And that's fine.
大した話でもありませんから。
It wasn't anything important.
では、失礼しますわね。
Well then, sorry for the bother. The scenario I feared didn't play out, eliciting a sigh of relief. The call was fortunate in more ways than one. I'd have to deal with any telephone calls coming in for my parents tonight. I was somehow able to deal with the phone call just now, but I couldn't continue to rely on such poor improvisation. I needed to make up a good story to explain that my parents were home, but couldn't answer the phone at the moment. They were making tempura and couldn't step away right now. That wasn't good enough. They were sick and went to bed because they weren't feeling well. Was that going to be safe enough? I was thinking about it on the way back to my room when the phone rang once again. It was like they were calling because they knew I was going to lie. I didn't want to pick up, but I knew I had to. They'd suspect my parents weren't here. I should have just taken the phone off the hook under the pretense that I didn't realize that it was... But since the phone rang, I had to pick it up. I prepared myself and lifted the receiver.
もしもし。
Hello. I stopped announcing that this was the Maibara residence. I had no reason to be that kind to someone I didn't know the identity of. But unlike my uncouth voice, the person on the other side sounded goofy and lighthearted.
どうも、夜分遅くに申し訳ありません。
Hello, my apologies for calling so late.
私、沖宮書房の大石と申しますが。
This is Oishi from the Okinomiya bookstore.
大石さんですか。
Oishi-san,
前原さんですか。
is that you, Maibara-san?
こんばんは。お元気そうで何よりです。
Good evening. Good to hear you're doing well.
ちょっと待ってくださいね。
Wait just a moment, please. I grabbed the portable handset and rushed up to my room with it. It was the same no matter where I was since there was no one else home, but I wanted to be in a spot that just felt a bit safer when speaking on the phone with Oishi-san.
お待たせしました。
Sorry for the wait.
いかがですか、その後お変わりは。
How are things? Anything changed since then? Since then, when was that exactly? There was something about the brazen way he talked that rubbed me the wrong way. The last time I spoke with Oishi-san was 2 days ago. The day I stayed home from school, I met Oishi-san on the way back from the hospital, and we headed into town for lunch and had a talk. Then, after that, Rana and Mion came to check up on me. And whenever I spoke with Oishi-san, they always knew about it. It was like that since the first time I met him. Today's phone call may well be found out by them as well.
もしもし。
Hello?
聞こえてますか、前原さん。
Can you hear me, Maibara-san?
え
Huh?
あ、すみません。
Sorry.
なんて言いました？
What did you say?
その後何か変わったことはありませんかとお尋ねしたんです。
I asked if anything's changed since last time.
お返事がないんで焦りましたよ。
There wasn't an answer, so I got a bit worried.
特には。
Not really. The words stopped in my throat. There was a ton of stuff that happened. All of it baffling. What should I talk about? I didn't understand any of it, but I should try asking. If I didn't ask now, I may never have another chance. This night, when my parents weren't home, I had no guarantees I would make it through the night safely after all.
大石さん、やっぱり俺、命を狙われているみたいです。
Well, Oishi-san, it seems that someone is after me.
本当ですか？
Really?
偶然の可能性もあるんですが、先日俺が病気で休んだ日、夕方にあの二人がお見舞いに来たんです。
It could all just be a coincidence, but that day I missed school when I was sick, the two of them came to check up on me.
あの二人？
Which two?
レナとミオンです。
Rena and Mion.
そしてそこで大石さんと一緒に昼飯を食ったことを正されました。
They started asking about how I had lunch with you.
それで
What next?
お見舞いってことでおはぎを置いていったんですが、その中に針が入ってたんです。
They left me some mochi when they came to visit, but there was a needle inside.
偶然飲み込まずに済みましたが、
Fortunately, I somehow didn't swallow it.
これってやっぱり脅迫でしょうか？
I wonder, could that have just been a threat?
その針は？
About the needle.
よく見かけるような普通の裁縫針のようでした。
It was just one of those common sewing needles you see all the time.
糸を通す穴が開いていて、
There was a hole to thread string through.
違いますよ、前原さん。針です。
Not that, Maibara-san. The needle itself.
証拠になります。
That's evidence.
脅迫だと立証できるかもしれません。
It could be used as proof that they threatened you.
その針はありますか？
Where is that needle? That's right. That's it. I dropped the receiver and rushed downstairs. When I tossed the mochi, I had overlooked it out of terror, but that needle was a valuable piece of evidence. Let's see, I threw the mochi and needle at the wall together. If it was there, then it would be on the living room wall. But my prudent mother had cleaned that living room wall, and there was not a trace of mochi left on it. Could it be that it dropped in the gap between the wall and the carpet? I frantically searched by running my palm along the carpet, but nothing turned up. I tried moving around the sofa and desks, pulling up the carpet, then flapping it around. But I couldn't find the needle. Did my mom clean up everything without noticing it? It was just 2 days ago. I didn't know what day they collected the burnable trash, but it may still be in the trash bin in the kitchen. I rushed into the kitchen, opened up the lid of the pail, and poured out the contents. But even at a glance, I could tell that it would be incredibly difficult to find this needle in the pile of trash. I was looking for a needle in a trash stack. I know. I'll try running my hand through it. It was a bit gross, but I was looking for a needle. If I felt a small prick, I'll be able to find it. It was a pretty tactless method, but it was the quickest. I held my breath and started striking the pile of trash with my hand. Filth flew about. There is nothing more disgusting than this, but it was not the time to be concerned about such details. I continued on for a while, but nothing turned up. I wanted to search more thoroughly, but I was still on the phone. I shouldn't keep Oishi-san waiting for too long. Later, when Mom got back, I'd have to ask her if there was a needle. I hastily began scribbling on the notepad affixed to the refrigerator with a magnet. Was there a needle? I scrawled the words with a red pen. I then dashed up the stairs, where I had been keeping Oishi-san waiting for far too long.
もしもし、
Hello?
どうでしたか？
How did it go?
見つかりません。
I couldn't find it.
あの時はつい気が動転していて。
I was really overwhelmed when it happened, and
そうですか。
I see.
見つかればでいいんです。
It would be great if you could find
保
it.
管しておいてくださいね。
Keep it safe. That's right. The needle wasn't the only incident. I had to tell him about this morning with the hit and run.
あと大石さん、それだけじゃないんです。
Also, Oishi-san, that isn't all.
実は今朝、
Actually, this morning, that van was definitely aiming for me. I could say that without question due to the circumstances at the time.
その車のナンバープレートは見ましたか？
Did you see the license plate?
こちらでも探してみます。
I can search for it from here. Damn. At the time, I just flipped out yelling at him, but I didn't look at the plate. What failures on my part with the needle and the plate number. I was so focused on just protecting myself that I let some of the most important details slip out of my grasp. I punched my pillow, annoyed at how worthless I was.
すみません。白いワゴン車ってこと以外はわかりません。
I'm sorry. I don't know much more than it was a white van.
仕方ないことですよ、前原さん。
Nothing to fret about, Maibara-san.
惹かれかければ気も動転します。
Anyone would be shaken up after being hit.
やっぱりこれらって偶然じゃないですよね。
I guess all of this really isn't a coincidence, is it? Oh, she started to hum and haw over on the other end. I could imagine him folding his
あ
arms.
と、レナの様子もやっぱり怪しいです。
Also, Nana is acting strange.
それはどんな感じですか？
How so? What Rena said on the way home today, asking why I was so much like Satoshi-kun. Now I could say it with confidence. That Rena knew what happened to Satoshi. She knew that there was more to it than him just simply disappearing.
レナは知っています。
Rena knows.
去年の鬼隠しにあったサトシのことを何か知っています。
She knows something regarding what happened to Satoshi, the kid who was demoned away last year.
それは具体的にどういうことですか？
What would that be exactly?
レナが言うには、俺はサトシとそっくりらしいんです。
Rena said I was the same as Satoshi.
このまま行くと、俺もサトシと同じ運命をたどると、
She
そん
said
な感じのことを言うんです。
She said something to the effect that the way things are going, I'll end up with the same fate as Satoshi.
運命ですか？
Fate, you say?
具体的にどんな運命をたどるか言及しましたか？
Exactly what kind of fate did she say would befall you?
転校と。
Transferring out, she said.
転校？
Transferring out.
レナは、サトシは転校したって言ってるんです。
Nana said Satoshi transferred out.
で、俺もこのままだと転校しちゃうぞって。
So, given how things are going with me, I'll transfer out too. Oh, she let out a stern sigh and then grumbled loudly.
前原さん、それはおそらく何かの脅迫、もしくは警告ですね。
Maibara-san, that was probably some sort of threat, or maybe some type of warning.
俺もそう思ってます。
I thought so too. At that point, I started to think, would it be prudent to sum up everything that had happened up until now as the machinations of some human perpetrator? Other than the theory of it being Rana and the others, I was left with Oyashiro-sama's curse actually existing as the only explanation. Of course, I couldn't tell that to Oishi-san, except Rana's strange behavior could be proof of either scenarios. Whether it was Oyashiro-sama's curse being real, or everything being part of a conspiracy committed by all of the villagers. Rana was involved. Rana had to know something. Rana was suspicious. What exactly was Rana? I couldn't help but think she was somehow involved with the prior string of mysterious deaths. I seem to recall that Oishi-san had admitted that he had dug into Rena's past a little. He was probably just downplaying it when he said a little, meaning he had actually dug pretty deep, most likely. I wanted to hear about Rena. I wanted to know what happened at her previous school, among other things that were still unknown to me. If Rena was somebody I should suspect. No, not that. I wanted to know the truth. Tonight, I was alone in this huge house. Even though I said I couldn't count on them, I had lost the security I felt just by having my parents being around. It wasn't like this house was some sort of fortress or castle. If a malicious person decided to use brute force, they'd easily gain entry. There were no other residents close to the Maibara residence. No one would be able to hear anything, no matter how loud it was. I had never felt as much resentment towards my father's artistic temperament and the fact that he had this house built in such a remote location as I did right now. I wondered if I would still be here by tomorrow morning. So I had to ask. Right now. Because I had no idea when the next chance would come.
大石さん、聞きたいことがあるんです。
Oishi-san, I have something I wanted to ask about.
隠さないでくださいね。
Please don't keep anything from me.
ええ、何でも聞いてください。
Sure, ask away. Even though he was so far away on the other end of the line, this was the most reliable he had ever felt. I wanted to ask about Rena, about what happened at her previous school.
実は、レナの。
Actually, regarding Rena's... I noticed a sound that had been going on for a while now. Since I was so focused on the call, I hadn't paid attention to it at first, but I finally realized it was the doorbell. The time was 7 o'clock. It was past the time the postman would be making a delivery, and past any sensible time for a neighbor to be visiting. I considered just acting like nobody was home, but that wouldn't be good. That would ruin all the work I put into making it look like my parents were home. I needed to answer the door.
もしもし、前原さん？
Hello, Maibara-san?
すみません。誰か来たみたいですので、ちょっと玄関に行ってきます。
Sorry, someone seems to be at the door. I'm going to go see who it is.
お客さんですか。すみません、すみません。
A guest? I see. My apologies.
今夜のお電話はこれくらいにしましょうか。
Should we end the phone call now? That would be a problem.
いえ、すぐ戻りますから。
No, I'll be back in a
電話
second.
はこのままでいいですか？
Do you mind if I just leave the phone on?
はいはい、構いませんよ。
It's fine. I don't mind. I dropped the handset on my bed and dashed down to the door. I needed to make up a good excuse to get them to leave. I had a hunch it was the lady who called right before Oishi-san did, in which case it would be one of the neighbors who's friends with my mom. I'll just say Mom isn't feeling well and went to bed early. That would be the easiest option. It would be hard for her to ask me to wake my mom up if she's not feeling well. The bell continued to ring at regular intervals. If someone didn't answer after you rang the bell so much, you'd normally give up and go home, wouldn't you? Without removing the chain, I opened the door slightly and peered out at the visitor. A chill ran down my spine. I knew it. Somewhere deep inside, I had prepared for this moment. I had tried to escape by imagining it was the easiest person to deal with, one of my mom's friends.
こんばんは。Good evening.
レナ。
There shouldn't be any reason for Rena to come over at this hour. The timing also made me feel uneasy, because it was just as I was about to ask Oishi-san about Rena. I wish I could have chalked this up to mere coincidence, but those unsettling words from Mion several days ago echoed back to me.
さてね。
There's nothing.
おじさんにわからないことはないからね。
This old man doesn't know.
レナ一人。
Are you alone, Rena? Yeah. It seemed that Mion wasn't with her, but that didn't change the situation at all.
何しに来たんだよ。
Why did you come here?
ねえ、圭一くん。ちゃんとドアを開けてお話ししたいな。
Hey, Keiji-kun, I'd like you to open the door so we can talk.
レナは玄関に入っちゃダメなのかな
Can I come inside, I wonder? It was true that speaking through a chain door wasn't the right way to talk to a classmate, but
うち、夜は必ずチェーンかけてるんだよ。
at my house, the chain has to be on at
気
night.
にすんなよ。
Don't worry about it.
なら、仕方ないかな。
Then it can't be helped, I guess. Rena looked at the ground sadly, but she kept smiling at least, and her effort to keep that smile up was quite pitiful. Even though she was tugging at my heartstrings, I didn't lower my guard. As long as I stayed like this, even if it made my heart ache, my life wasn't in danger. What I really feared, more than the possibility that hoodlums would assault me if I removed the chain, was trusting Rena enough to remove the chain and having my friendship betrayed. As long as the chain wasn't unlatched, even if it made my heart ache, I wouldn't have to deal with being betrayed by Rena. Since it didn't seem like I'd removed the chain from her silent urging, she appeared to give up on trying to get into the entranceway.
あのさ、圭一くん。ご飯食べた？
Have you eaten yet, Keiichi-kun? No, I haven't eaten. Since my mom wasn't there, dinner wouldn't be ready no matter how long I waited. I laid down when I got home, was woken up by the phone, and didn't have a chance to eat since I used up all that time talking. I was going to have cup noodles in any case. I could just eat one whenever I wanted
い
to.
や、まだだよ。
No, not yet.
それがどうしたよ。
What about it?
じゃあよかった。
Then good.
これ見て。
Look here.
お惣菜とか持ってきてあげたの。
I brought a bunch of dishes. Nana held out a stack of boxes wrapped in cloth.
お台所とか貸してくれれば、お味噌汁も温めてあげられるよ。
If I could use your kitchen, I can heat up the miso soup and other stuff.
いいよ、そこまでしてくれなくても。
It's fine, you don't need to do that.
でも、お豆腐もお野菜もたっぷりなの。
But there's a lot of tofu and vegetables in it.
圭一くん、そういうの嫌いかな
Does Keiichi-kun not like that type of stuff, I wonder? There's no way I wouldn't like that. I love miso soup with lots of ingredients. White radish, carrots, burdock root, and potatoes. Dense and fibrous root vegetables. Yeah, that miso soup looks incredible.
ご飯も持ってきてあげたから、レンジで温めればすぐ食べられるし。
I also brought rice, so if you microwave it, it'll be ready to eat in no time. Without a doubt, rice needs miso soup. Stuffing rice down your gullet, sipping miso soup in between ravenous bites. Oh yes, how wonderful it is to be born Japanese.
それからね、またお漬物を作ってきたんだよ。
Also, I made some more pickles.
今度は山菜のお漬物なの。
I made sansai pickles this time. Before I had moved here to Hinamizawa, I scoffed at the mountain vegetables called sansai. But I was captivated by their charm the first time I tried them. Such a deep yet light flavor. Those so-called supermarket vegetables taste rough and overpowering in comparison. If you had to describe them, then they were the vegetables for the uninitiated. To become an expert such as myself, you first had to partake of sansai. It was common knowledge around here that the Ryugu family's traditional pickles were wonderfully delicious. No matter what kind of pickles they were. They'd go so well with that fluffy white rice.
それからね。
And also. But wait, there's more. So delicious, it just seems so delicious. Farewell to my unhealthy self, who said he'd make do with cup noodles. Nana appeared to be in good spirits, and she was offering such a delicious-sounding dinner. The stress evaporated from my gut, and hunger reared its voracious head. At the same time, my wariness of Rena suddenly dwindled. Rena did say she was alone. It shouldn't be a problem letting her inside, though the possibility that it was laced with poison still hadn't been ruled out. At that moment, a cold chill ran down my spine once again. I couldn't understand why such a sensation had occurred just then, but the voice inside me was sounding the alarm. This happy Nana speaking of this charming dinner was dependent on one premise, and that premise was that tonight dinner hadn't been made at my house, meaning it was under the assumption that my mom, who should be making it, wasn't here. At any normal household, 7 o'clock would be around the middle of dinner time. If my mom were here, we'd be eating dinner around this time as well. The fact that she'd brought over all the makings of a meal at this time was inherently strange. Unless she knew. Nana, did she know that my parents weren't home? But there was also the chance that this was a bluff. I had turned on the lights and a bunch of other stuff to make it seem like my parents were here. There was a chance that Rena was unsure if my parents were home. But I had to wonder. The laundry, the garage, the evening paper. There were plenty of signs of them being hastily tidied up. It was hard to say that Rena didn't have a chance to determine if my parents were here or not. But there was no reason for me to confess that right now. I should try holding on to that fact as long as I could. First of all, the chain was still latched. As long as I didn't take it off, Nana wouldn't be able to do anything to me.
Ah, ありがたいんだけどさ、もう少しで夕飯ができるみたいなんだよ。
I'm quite grateful, but dinner will be ready pretty soon.
そうなの？
Is that so?
そうなの？
Is that so?
せっかくで申し訳ないんだけどさ、
I know you went through all the effort and everything, but well, unable to think of a good way to refuse, my words trailed off weakly.
でも、ちょっとはおかずになると思うな。
But some of this could work as side dishes, I think.
悪いけど間に合ってるよ。
I'm sorry, we have more than enough already.
うちのお袋ってさ、結構おかずをいっぱい作るんだよ。
My mom always makes quite a few sides.
だから。
So.
おかずあるの？
Huh? You side dishes? With a smile that bordered on a cringe, I dodged her questions apologetically. But the feeling I tried to ignore began creeping up my back again. I spoke as if my mom was settling down for dinner right now, but it didn't mesh well with what Rena was saying. Rena was talking as if she was aware of some obvious fact, and that I was aware of it as well.
ケイチくんもおかずとか作れるんだね。
So Keiichi-kun can cook.
何を作ったのかな？
What did you make, I wonder?
いや、別に俺が。
No, well, it's not that Nana had assumed out of nowhere that I had made the dishes. No, not so much that I'd made them, but rather that my mom hadn't.
本当に作ったの？
Did you really make them?
おかず。
The side dishes?
ケイチくんが？
Did you, Keiichi-kun?
だから俺が作ったんじゃないよ。
It wasn't me who made them.
お袋が作った。いや、作ってるんだよ。
My mom did. No, she's making them.
今。
Right now.
だからさ、悪いけどレナの持ってきてくれたのは食べられないんだよ。
So, you see, I'm sorry, but I can't eat what you brought. Nana fell silent at that moment. At that moment, I felt the light had suddenly disappeared from her eyes.
ケイチくんのお夕飯当ててみようか？
How about I try guessing what Keiichi-kun's dinner will be?
なんだっていいじゃないか。
It doesn't matter. what I'm gonna eat.
ね。
Let's see. The conversation might appear natural at first glance, but Rana was firmly in control. It felt like I was being interrogated.
そのお夕飯、お湯だけで作れるんじゃないかな。
Your dinner. I wonder, is it something that can be made with just hot water?
おいおい、侮るなよ。
Hey now, stop with the insults.
うちのお袋のスペシャルなディナーを見くびるなってんだ。
I can't believe you'd belittle my mom's extravagant dinner like that.
そりゃもう満願全席状態ですごいのなんの。
Tickets sold out full capacity already. It's that amazing. I tried my best to put on a strong front, but I couldn't grip my teeth quite right. So instead, I looked like someone who was borderline hysterical. But Rana showed no reaction whatsoever, even to that silliness.
ケイチくん、本当にお母さん、ご飯作ってってくれたの？
Keiichi-kun, did your mother leave you dinner?
いやだからくれたんじゃなくて今作ってるんだよ。
Oh, you see, she didn't leave me dinner. She's making it right now.
もうすぐ晩飯に。
It's almost time for dinner. Nana had taken that assertion of mine, that my mother was home and making dinner right now, and was completely ignoring it. I could tell that the more I panicked, the colder Rana became.
ねえ、ケイチくん。
Hey, Keiichi-kun. At that moment, an uncomfortable chill crept in from the gap in the doorway.
お母さん、お家にいるのかな？かな？
Is your mom home? I wonder. I couldn't keep up this charade anymore. Rana, she knew full well that my parents weren't home. But I'd come too far to admit that now. Anyway, my parents were here and we'd be having dinner soon. That was the situation I'd concocted. So I answered. I told her she was here.
いるよ。もちろん。
She's here, of course. I could feel the humidity drying out from the surrounding air. Nana's eyes were becoming even more frigid, piercing me with their gelid glare.
どうして？
Why?
何のことかな。
What do you mean? I tried acting casual, but that facade was torn off me the instant I looked into Rena's eyes. That look, it informed me of Rena's response faster than she could open her mouth.
どうしてさっきから嘘をつくのかな？かな？
Why have you been lying to me? I wonder.
嘘なんか。
I'm not lying.
嘘だよね。
That's a lie, isn't it?
嘘なんかじゃ。
It's not a lie.
嘘だよ！
It's lies. Nana's outburst sent a jolt surging through my body. Nana and I were still separated by what few inches that slightly ajar but still chained door could afford. But despite that, I was being cornered. My house, which I'd considered a safe haven until now, had become more like a dark alleyway where no one could save me.
ケイチくんのお夕飯、当てるよ。
Shall I guess your dinner, Keiichi-kun? Let's see. I knew now that Nana had already known that my parents would not be here tonight. But it was still so strange that it had come to this. Even if she somehow knew that my parents weren't home, there was no way she would be able to guess what I'd be eating tonight. But Nana said she'd guess. How could she guess it? How could she
カッ
know?
プラーメン。当たりでしょ？
Cup noodles, that's right, isn't it? That I was going to eat. Wait, the cooking repertoire of a man who can't do housework is probably nothing but cup noodles after all. Looking at this statistically, it was the most probable answer. That didn't mean she was guessing.
ラーメンだけじゃきっとお腹すくと思うな。
I don't think you'll be full with just noodles.
ご飯とかも一緒の方がきっと腹持ちいいと思うよ。
I think having rice and stuff will definitely hit the spot. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. This was just a coincidence. Nana was just reading certain tells of mine. So the fact that she was inferring what I was thinking alarmed me. But it wasn't as if she was actually reading my mind. If it was being read, then she was a demon. No, not a demon. Things like that. They couldn't possibly exist.
好きなの？
Do you like them?
ラーメンがかよ。
You mean noodles?
豚骨生姜味。
No. Nana indicated that the point my answer was addressing was wrong. Her rebuttal was so short that I momentarily didn't understand the words that Nana had spoken.
ごめん、レナ。
Sorry, Nana.
今、なんて。
What did you say just now?
え？何が？
Huh? About what?
今さ、何が好きって聞いたんだよ。
Just now, you asked me if there was something that I liked, didn't you? It wasn't long before I regretted how carelessly I'd pushed forward with that question. It was such a simple answer. That's why I wasn't able to comprehend it.
豚骨生姜味。
Pork bone and ginger flavor. I wondered how I appeared in the moments my mind went completely blank, until the moment I was able to recover. As my field of view began to distort, slowly swirling in a counterclockwise direction, I lost all sense of balance.
なんでそこまでわかるんだよ！
Why do you know that? I didn't even deny it. That was the type of frenzied state I was in. How could Rena know even this? Not even caring as I mashed my head against the door, I fixated my gaze on Rena. But she didn't even flinch when she saw me do that.
確かに買った。
I certainly did buy them.
まとめて買った。
I bought a bunch at once.
俺が箱買いした。
I bought a whole case.
それがどうしてわかるんだ！
How could you know that?
なんでかな？
Why, I wonder.
不思議だね。
Quite strange, isn't it?
だね。
Isn't it? How could you dodge the question at a time like this? The chain and the door were no longer protecting me.
どうしてわかる？
How do you know?
なぜ知ってる？
Why do you know?
答えろ！
Answer me!
買ったのはセブンスマート。
You bought them at 7th
だ
Mart,
よね。
didn't you? A shiver ran up my spine. I tried covering it up with an angry facade.
だからなんでわかるんだよ！
Like I said, why do you know that?
ケイチ君の後ろずっとくっついてたから。
I was behind you, following you the whole time.
何を言ってんだよ！
What are you saying? I couldn't understand why she was saying she'd been following me the whole time.
だから
That's because
レナが
Nana was
ケイチ君の
right behind
後ろに
Keiichi-kun's back
ずっとくっついてたの。
the whole time. Like that night? That night I was absorbed in my phone conversation with Oishi-san. I didn't even sense her being there, standing behind the door, behind me, standing there, just like that.
ケイチ君がいろんなラーメン選んでるとこ後ろからずっと見てたの。
When Keiichi was picking out the noodles, I was watching the entire time.
いろんな種類を選んでたんだよね。
You picked out so many different flavors, didn't you?
それでお母さんに怒られたの。
Then your mom got angry.
高いラーメンばっかり選ぶから一種類にしなさいって。
If you were going to pick the expensive ones, then you should just pick one type, she said.
それでケイチ君大好きな大きいカップの豚骨生姜味を選んだんだよね。
Then Keiichi-kun picked out that big box of pork bone and ginger flavor that he loves so much, didn't he?
レナも好きだよ。
I like it too.
豚骨ラーメン。
Pork bone noodles.
でも大きいカップは全部食べきれないけどね。
But I can never eat a whole big bowl myself. My brain was paralyzed, dulling my senses. It might have been a defense mechanism to diminish the fear I was feeling to non-traumatizing levels. With the fear being diminished, the fog enveloping my mind was cleared away. Then I could understand what Nana was saying and started to put meaning behind her words. Even so, my fear hadn't subsided completely. It was like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, eyes closed so I didn't have to look down. It didn't actually solve any of the basic problems. I slowly took a step backwards, and as I withdrew, Nana advanced.
だからケイチくん、
So, Keiichi-kun,
ここを開けて。
can you open this?
レナと一緒にご飯食べよう。
We can eat dinner together.
きっと美味しいから。ね。
I'm sure it's going to be delicious, so... Okay? Nana's pale, slender fingers squirmed through the crack in the door, one at a time, as if they had a mind of their own, rattling the chain. If she had unlatched the chain from the door, a feeling of terror would have just exploded with me. But Nana didn't do that. She was simply imploring me to remove the chain. I tried my hardest to light the fuse to the powder keg in my heart, trying again and again. Clatter, clatter. But it doesn't light. It doesn't light.
開けて。
Open up,
ケイチくん。
Keiichi-kun.
帰ってくれ。
Please go away.
頼むから。帰ってくれ。
I beg you, please go away.
どうしてそんな意地悪を言うのかな。かな。
How can you say something so mean, I wonder? I wonder.
帰ってくれ。
Please go away.
帰れよ。
Go away.
帰れ。
Go away. The powder keg inside me finally went off. No smoldering. It just exploded. I tackled the door. The force through the door had knocked Nana momentarily off balance. I couldn't hesitate here. I grabbed onto the doorknob with both hands, planted my feet firmly, and pulled with all my might. But that slamming sound I so desired didn't happen. I could feel a tiny, disturbing bit of resistance keeping the door from closing. And the source of that was Nana's fingers. Each of those fingers wriggling, squirming around like the tendrils of a carnivorous plant through the crack in the doorway.
痛いよ、ケイチくん。痛い。
It hurts, Keiichi-kun, it hurts. It wasn't a harsh shriek, but more of a yelp she was trying to keep back.
帰れ。帰れ。帰れ。
Go away, go away, go away. I kept on pulling on the door with all my might. I didn't even realize that if I didn't loosen my pull on the door, at least momentarily, Nana wouldn't be able to pull her fingers out, and that was why the door wasn't closing.
本当に痛いの、ケイチくん。
It really hurts, Keiichi-kun.
悪ふざけが過ぎたなら謝るよ。
I'm sorry if I was messing around too much. I didn't care one bit for her apology. No matter how much she apologized, it didn't change any of what she had done up until now. It didn't change anything.
痛いの。痛いの。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
It hurts, it hurts. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
帰れ。帰れ。帰れ。
Go away. Go away. Go away. Nana couldn't leave, even if she wanted to, because I'd trapped her fingers. Nana's white fingers had become deep red and were no longer even squirming.
ごめんなさい。
I'm sorry.
ごめんなさい。
Sorry.
ごめんなさい。
I'm sorry.
帰れ。帰れ。帰れ。
Go away. Go away.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Nana's apologies were occasionally twisted with pain, but like a broken record, she was intent on repeating it over and over. Go away, go away, go away. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it! I pulled on the door even harder. Finally, Rena's fingers were somehow able to slip out from their imprisonment into the doorway. The moment that happened, the door closed soundly, and I could hear the thud of Rena falling on her butt on the other side. I locked the door immediately. It made a loud clunk, voicing my rejection to Rena. I'm sorry. Keiichi-kun. I'm sorry. Open up, Keiichi-kun. Rena leaned against the door, apologizing profusely and nothing else. After confirming that I was sufficiently sealed off from her, I trudged away from the entryway. On the other side, I could still hear Rena echoing her apology. I'm sorry. Those pitiful words. They would forever be seeking my forgiveness. I didn't feel bad about this at all. But that wasn't out of any sort of malice. I felt a sort of hazy sense of relief that I was able to escape from Rena. Before, Mia had threatened me at this doorway, saying there was nothing she didn't know. And now at the same place, Rena had told me the same thing. My feeble attempts to disguise the fact that my parents weren't home had served no purpose from the start. I should have just pretended to be out and not even opened the door. My meager plans hadn't helped at all. In Hinamizawa, it was impossible to outwit them. Even though I was on the other side of the door, I wanted to get as far away from Rena as possible. 1 step, 2 steps. With each one, her sniveling apologies became more distant. I sprinted up the stairs and dove into my room. As you would expect, I was no longer able to hear Rena repeating her endless apology. Diving into my bed, I was startled by the hard lump I felt. There was something in my bed. It was the receiver. I finally remembered. I was in the middle of a call with Oishi-san. Looking at the clock, apparently not much time had passed since I went downstairs. Could it be that my clock had run out of batteries? I had talked with Rena for so long. How did almost no time pass? But the hand on the clock was ticking forward 1 second every second as usual. As I put the still warm receiver to my ear, time, which felt frozen, began moving once again.
もしもし、大石さん。
Hello, Oishi-san.
お待たせしてすみませんでした。
Sorry to keep you
い
waiting.
えいえ、大してお待ちしていませんよ。
No, not at all. I didn't wait that long. It became apparent that the amount of time that had passed between myself and Oishi-san was different. Over the phone, I could hear an energetic voice from a sports program or something. It drove home just how far away Oishi-san really was.
今、レナが来ました。
Rena came just now.
遊びに来たんですか？
Did she come to play? I wasn't confident that I could coherently explain the situation to Oishi-san. But I didn't need to right now. Right now, I needed to know about Rena. That's right. I was planning to ask Oishi-san more about Rena, but Rena's little visit had interrupted the conversation. What was true and what was false, I couldn't tell. The one thing I knew was the single grim reality that Rena was suspicious. I might be able to figure something out if I asked Oishi-san about her. Up until now, I had regretted it whenever I forced myself to ask about things that I was better off not knowing. But looking at it that way, you could say I'd hit rock bottom. There was no possible way I could feel any more regret than I did right now. No, rather, I wanted to know if there was anything beyond this I would regret more. Forget about tomorrow. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility for something to happen tonight. I wanted to know everything I could. I was absolutely not going to die like this. Not without knowing anything. I definitely
レ
won't.
ナさんのことですか？
Regarding Rena Ryugu-san,
調べましたよ。
I did a bit of digging.
まあ簡単には。
Yeah, well, it wasn't much. I understood that Oishi-san was talking in circles. A bit meant I dug so deep it'd be hard to discuss with you since you're her friend.
その簡単な全てを知りたいんです。
I want to know everything from your research.
あなたが聞いて面白いような話はありませんよ。
I don't think you'll be very interested in what I have to say, though.
大石さ
I spoke as calmly as possible to Oishi-san, who was continuing to avoid the issue. And then I said it.
ん、竜宮レナは怪しいと思っています。
I think Nana Ryugu is suspicious.
過去の事件がたとえお社様のたたりによるものだったにせよ、竜宮レナは関わっています。
Even if the past incidents were from Oyashiro-sama's curse, Rena is involved.
レナさんが怪しいと思える具体的な証拠があるのですか？
Do you have some sort of proof that makes you believe Rena-san is suspicious? The manner in which Oishi-san spoke became very firm. Do you have some sort of proof? That was him talking as a detective.
状況証拠だけです。
I only have circumstantial evidence.
そうですか。
I see. I could tell even over the phone how disappointed Oishi-san was. Pulling on the fishing line when he felt a bite, only to reel in the bait. Disappointed but ready to cast the line once more. That's how it seemed.
大石さん、
Oishi-san,
目に見える証拠がなければ動けないんですか？
you can't do anything without physical proof, can you? What I meant was, you can't come and save me without proof. I stuck that barb in there. As Oishi-san loved roundabout ways of saying things, he understood me just fine.
大丈夫ですよ、前原さん。
It's fine, Maibara-san.
あなたは私が守ります。
I'll protect you. That was not the least bit reassuring. Oishi-san was just using me to continue his investigation. I was just going to get killed, and my corpse would be an important piece of evidence. That's all I was to him.
大石さんの捜査は俺の生死と無関係でしょうが、俺は死ねば終わりなんです。
Whether I'm alive or dead may be of no concern to your investigation, but it's all over for me when I die. Oishi-san went silent on the other end of the line. That may have been too blunt, but I didn't care. All I needed to relay to Oishi-san was that I was currently in a very dangerous situation.
だから話してください。
So please tell me.
レナのこと。
Tell me about Nana.
サトシは転校しました。
Satoshi transferred out.
多分俺もそれほど遠くない将来、レナの言う転校をするでしょう。
Not too far in the future, I'll probably also do what Rena called transferring out as well.
ですが大石さんには俺の死体を見つけることもできないでしょうね。
But you won't be able to find my corpse.
現にサトシの死体だってまだ見つけられてない。
You haven't even been able to find Satoshi's body yet.
前原さん、どうか落ち着いて。
Alright, my Bara-san, please calm down. I was already suppressing my agitation, even without Oishi-san having to tell me. It wouldn't solve anything if I continued to scream about my mistrust in the police. It would seem that I could only depend on myself and the bat Satoshi left behind to protect myself. Then I at least wanted to know about what happened before Nana transferred schools.
つまらない話になるのは覚悟の上ですね。
You're aware that this won't be very interesting, right? Oishi-san, realizing my resolve couldn't be swayed, finally caved.
今の俺にとってつまらない話は何一つありません。
Right now, to me, there is nothing that I'll find uninteresting.
お願いします。
Please.
まずいくつかお断りすることがあります。
There are a few things I need you to agree to.
はい。
Okay.
他言無用でお願いします。
Please keep this confidential.
また内容には一部憶測も含まれているかもしれません。
Also, part of this may be speculation.
すべてが真実ではないかもしれないということです。よろしいですね。
Not all of it may be true. Are you still interested?
真実ではないかもしれない。
It might not be true.
言ってる意味がよくわかりません。
I don't understand what you mean.
ひなみ沢の連続開始事件は捜査本部がありません。
There isn't one main investigation for the mysterious chain of deaths in Hinamizawa.
毎年の事件は個々に扱われています。
Each one is treated as its own individual case.
ですから竜宮レナが捜査線に浮上したことは一度もないのです。
Thus, Rana Ryugu has never been linked to any of the investigations.
つまりですね、
Basically, you see,
レナの調査は警察としてでなく、
This isn't an investigation of Nana done by the
個人
police
として行ったということですか？
and is a personal inquiry. Is that what you're telling me?
ご理解いただけて助かります。
This will make things a lot quicker since you understand.
話のほとんどは電話、もしくは会って聞かせてもらったものばかりです。
All of it is from either phone calls or meetings and
です
interviews,
から裏が取れていません。
so they aren't corroborated.
鵜呑みにしないでほしいということなんですよ。
I'm asking you to take all this with a grain of salt, is what I mean.
ご理解いただけますね。
Do we have an agreement?
全部聞いた話だけなんですか？
All of it is just from what you heard?
申し訳ないです。個人調査ですのでね。
Yes, my apologies. It's all my personal investigation, you see.
あれ、
That thing.
以前レナのカルテを見たって言いませんでしたか？
Before, you said you saw Nana's chart, didn't you?
確かにそう聞きましたよ。
I'm sure I heard you say that. Oishi-san paused for a moment on the other end of the line.
そんなことも言いましたかね。
I told you that too.
気のせいということにしてください。
Please pretend you didn't hear anything about that. I didn't care about Oishi-san having certain obligations and responsibilities. I also didn't care if there was no proof. Even if they were just rumors, there's no smoke without fire after all.
話してください、大石さん。
Please tell me, Oishi-san.
わかりました。
Understood. Oishi-san finally opened those tight lips of his. It seemed that Rena lived in Hinamizawa long ago. She had moved to Ibaraki Prefecture just before starting elementary school. Then, following that, right after transferring, the unfortunate incident with the breaking of the school windows happened. Then Rena confided to the doctor. It was Oyashiro-sama. This was everything I knew.
私が知る話も前原さんと大きくは変わりません。
There isn't much difference between what I know and what you know, Maibara-san.
ではどこを詳しく調べたんですか？
Then what part did you investigate further? I didn't need to ask. It was the incident right before she transferred back to Hinamizawa.
レナが起こした事件とその後の医者での告白ですね。
The incident Rena was responsible for and what she divulged to the doctor afterwards, correct?
はい。
Yes.
大石さんはその内容を知っているからこそレナたちを疑っているんですね。
After you learned about that, you started suspecting Rena and the others, didn't you?
疑っています。
Yes, I did suspect them.
やはりレナたちが犯人。
So they're the ones after all?
ああ、いえ、疑うとはそういう意味ではないんです。
Oh, no. That's not what I mean by suspect them. Oishi-san was the type of person to say things with confidence, but these particular words were less than reassuring.
じゃあ何を疑ってるんですか？
Then who did you suspect?
親代様ですよ。
That it was Oyashiro-sama.
え？
Huh?
親代様のたたりって本当にあるのかななんてまあ。
The Oyashiro-sama's curse really exists. Yeah. Right, well. Oishi-san's laugh was quite dry, certainly not the kind that would make you want to join in. Oishi-san resumed the conversation about the dubious circumstances behind Satoshi's disappearance, the course of events leading him to delve into Nana's past. Just then, there was thunder in the distance, and a heavy rain started pouring down. It came without warning, a downpour fiercely beating the ground. I had left the window in my room open a crack to let the heat out. The violent wind danced into my room, making the curtains flap wildly.
どうしました？
What is it?
あ、いえ、急にすごい雨が。
Nothing. It suddenly started raining heavily.
すみません。
Sorry.
どうぞ続けてください。
Sorry. Please continue. I got up while still on the phone and grasped the window.
はじめに事件と申し上げましたが、学校側も被害者も告発していないので、 正式には事件ではないのです。
I said at the beginning it was an incident, but because neither the school nor the victims filed charges, the police were never involved.
でですね、この辺りがどうも関係者皆さん口が重いんですよ。
So, you see, those involved were very reluctant to talk.
被害者の一人は片目に後遺症を残すぐらい殴られているのにもかかわらずです。
Regardless of there being a victim who had one eye beaten so badly that it had permanent damage.
学校側か、もしくは表沙汰になるのを望まない何者かがいろいろ根回しをしたのかもしれませんね。
It could have been the school or possibly some individual who made arrangements to keep this from going public.
またカウンセリングを担当した神経科医も職業倫理に厳格な方で。
Also, the psychologist was very strict about their professional ethics.
もしもし、
Hello?
前原さん、
Maibara-san?
聞こえてます？
Can you hear me? There was a figure of a person standing by the light near the mailbox this whole time. Even in this torrential rain, they didn't have an umbrella. They were unquestionably drenched from head to toe. In this shower, which more resembled a waterfall, droplets of water dripped down from her hair. Just standing there, both arms dangling at her side. In one hand was the stack of boxes wrapped in cloth. Her eyes focused on my room, focused on me as I was about to close the window. Her mouth was methodically repeating a chewing motion. It was as if she had had something hard to chew in her mouth, with her cheeks puffing out. What could she be eating over there? How could it be at this time I was more enthralled by Nana instead of the shocking developments being brought to light by Oishi-san? If it hadn't started raining, I wouldn't have gone to the window. Then I wouldn't have noticed the Nana, nor would I have noticed that. Nana's mouth was moving in the same pattern. She wasn't eating something, she was repeating something. What was it? Was she repeating to me? What was she saying? And why was I right up against the window, fixated on her?
もしもし、
Hello?
前原さん、
Maibara-san?
聞こえてますか？
Can you hear me?
もしもーし。
Hello?
ごめんなさい。
I'm sorry.
前原さん、
Huh? Maibara-san?
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
もしもし、
Hello?
前原さん、
Maibara-san?
どうしましたか？
What's the matter? Even in this torrential downpour, Nana was still apologizing. The other self inside me drew the curtain hastily with my right hand, blocking my view of the outside. But even doing that, Nana's relentless apologies still reached my ears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If I forgive you for this, will you forgive me for that? Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. I'm sorry. 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 Damn it. Why should I have to forgive her? I'm the one who wants to be forgiven. What part of me can't you forgive? I won't be killed. If you won't forgive me, then I won't forgive you either. I won't forgive. 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 Won't forgive.
前原さん、
Maibara-san,
聞こえてるなら返事をしてください。
if you can hear me, then please respond.
もしもーし。
Hello? New tips unlock. Split personality at the 7th Mart.
よく映画などに登場しますが、簡単に言うとどのようなものでしょうか？
I see it in movies quite often, but what is it exactly?
複数の人格を持つことによる逃避と考えられています。
Multiple personalities are thought to be escapism.
多重人格は逃避の一つなのですか？
Multiple personality disorder is a form of escape?
さようです。
Correct.
そのメカニズムは完全には解明されていませんが、精神を守るために脳が行う防御行動の一つではないかと考えられています。
The exact mechanism is not fully understood, but it's believed to be a type of defense for the brain to retain mental stability.
例えば貧乏な人がお金持ちになった自分を想像するという現実逃避ってありますよね。これも多重人格なわけですか？
Hypothetically, poor people imagining themselves as wealthy is a form of escapism, is it not? Is this also a form of multiple personality disorder?
極論はできませんが、講義的にはそう解釈できます。つまり、誰にでもあり得る現象なのです。
I wouldn't go that far, but broadly speaking, one could infer that. It's something that occurs in us all.
その現実逃避の見境がなくなると二重人格になるのですか？
Does a split personality occur when one cannot tell which is reality and which is the escape?
ちょっと難しいですね。そう提唱する説もありますし、否定する説もあります。
That's difficult to say. There are some who agree with that and some who disagree.
諸説紛々です。
There's no consensus.
では精神医学の世界ではまだ多重人格というのは未知の解明されていない現象なんですか？
Then, is the occurrence of multiple personalities still an unknown phenomenon? Something not fully comprehended in the psychiatric field?
残念ながらそうなります。今後の研究が期待されます。
Unfortunately, that is the current state of things. We can only put our hope in future research.
でも二重人格なんてなんだかかっこいいですよね。どういう人が二重人格になれるんですか？
But it's sort of cool having a split personality. What kind of people get split personalities?
なれると言いますか、なりやすいと言いますか。最近の研究では遺伝と死因が複雑に絡み合い、
Recent studies find that those who develop it, or rather those who are more susceptible to developing it, may be genetically predisposed or have had abnormal mental development.
中でも幼少期の育児体験が大きく作用するのではないかと言われています。
Some say that childhood abuse increases the chances.
そういえばこの A 君も家庭に問題を抱えてるんですよね。気の毒に。
Speaking of which, person A here experienced abuse as a child, didn't he? How sad.
7つの人格を持つ青年 A。
Person A has 7 different personalities.
では VTR の続きをどうぞ。
Let's watch a video of him.
ですがその前にコマーシャル。
Right after these commercials. The 7th Mart was a bargain supermarket with food and alcohol. What is this, Keiichi? So many. There's no reason to get all the different kinds, is there? I flopped all the different colored cup noodle bowls into the cart.
最近のカップ麺は凝ってて種類も多いんだよ。どれも一通りは食ってみたいし。
Cup noodles have gotten so elaborate recently, and there are a bunch of different types. I want to try each of them at least once. I knew it was pretty selfish of me, but I thought I'd at least give it a try. Keiichi, buy them in the big case. It's cheaper. Dad faltered. Well, I had a feeling it'd end up like this. Now that Dad had thrown his hat into the ring, I'd have to compromise.
それじゃあ一種類しか食えないよ。飽きちゃうって。
Then I'd only get to eat one kind. I'd get bored with it. I was resisting as a formality. I had already given up inside and wasn't sure which of the case of noodles to get. If you can't pick, then Mommy will pick for you. You don't have to rush me. I quickly searched the cases of noodles for what I want. Pork bone and ginger, large cup. Hey, Keiichi, can't you get a more normal one? If I let Mom pick, she'd err on the side of safety and get soy sauce or salt flavored. So when I plonked a large box of pork bone flavor in the shopping cart, Mom looked at me with an expression as if to say, "These ones?" To show her this was my last compromise, I began explaining the choice.
豚骨はうまいんだよ。大盛りだけど大味ってわけじゃないし。
Pork bone is good. You get a large serving, but the flavor isn't too strong. I remembered insisting that the noodles I picked were the right kind. In this frozen memory in time, this encapsulated world, I didn't have the power to look around my surroundings. So, I did what I could and reached out with my hearing and vision, sharpening my senses to find the presence I overlooked. No matter how much I searched through my field of vision, I couldn't see Anna. I rewound the situation, searching, but of course I couldn't find her. Then, was she spying at me from my blind spot? I go through the sound and presences again, looking. I could sense the other customers. They were all mixed about, moving as they please. There was nobody looking over this way, and no one was trying to get behind me. Not here. Couldn't be here. Probably wasn't here. I would definitely notice if someone was right behind me, even when I wasn't on my guard. I smiled wryly at the thought of using a vague word like probably right before contradicting it with definitely. Then I paused my mental replay as a chill ran down my spine. There was definitely a presence like a shadow behind me. That was a terror unlike any other. If a presence really had manifested behind me, I would definitely have turned around to check for it. But the world had moved on, and there was no way for me to turn around. While carrying that frightening shadow on my back, I was gleefully running around the store, searching for a case of noodles. Running through the instant noodle section, bad-mouthing my mom. But there was a presence constantly at my back, sticking to me like a shadow. No way to see what it was. Realizing it now after the fact was horrifying and repulsive. In that moment of time, I was running around gleefully, carrying that cardboard box. Tip-tap. But listening to that moment again, I could hear footsteps other than mine going pit-pat with every step. Tip-tap, tip-tap, tip-tap. Pit-pat, pit-pat, pit-pat. Tip-tap, tip-tap. Pit-pat, pit-pat. Tip-tap, tip-tap. Pit-pat, pit-pat. While I was running, the sound of those barefoot footsteps going pit-pat were right behind me. Me running around gleefully in that closed-off moment in time. But I didn't hear it. No, I heard it. That's why I remembered it. I didn't think I had heard anything. That's why I didn't turn around. That is why I didn't turn around. In that moment, the pit-pat of those footsteps were following me the entire time. I couldn't run faster and escape. I couldn't run any faster than I had at that time. I couldn't turn around. I hadn't turned around before, not once. Then I returned to my parents and started talking. The shadow-like presence was right at my back. Since I didn't move, the shadow didn't move. That is why it made no sound. That was all. At that time, I hadn't taken a single step while talking with my parents. I was just standing there. This was undeniable. And yet, I heard it. A pit-pat. That shouldn't be. If I took 3 steps, it followed 3 steps. Wasn't that the rule? There was no sound other than that. At that time, the entire world had gone dark. A sudden darkness. It was the end of my reflective journey. I was tired. I wanted to end it. Someone turned on the light. Except my body couldn't move. As if I was soon into that moment in time. Pit-pat. My past self's hair stood on end. That's impossible. Now that's just breaking the rules. I haven't moved. So you shouldn't be moving either. I couldn't move. So you shouldn't be able to move either. Follow the rules. Pit, pat. Yet that sound echoed in the darkness once again. The hair on the back of my neck pricked up on the end. It was so close. It was hard to tell whether it was touching the hair or not. Why couldn't I move? Like how the presence was moving behind me. I quickly realized I could move. It's just that I was scared and didn't want to. But now was the only time I could turn around. It was something unforgivable in this moment in time. But I needed to turn around immediately. As if my entire being was trying to force me to stop, it began to administer a pain like a needle being stuck into my every pore. I'll turn around. I'll turn around. I'm not scared at all. I'll turn around. I'll turn around. I'm not scared at all. A scream I was unable to vocalize. I turned around. At first, I couldn't understand the meaning of it. What? What is this? Just as a person's mouth might bite into an apple, slurp the juices, and finally discover that it was an apple, my mind began to process the scene before my eyes by eating the apple. Munch, munch, chew, chew. Slurp the juices and discover the apple. Meaning, what was in front of me was... Thank you all for sticking with me with this longer episode of Higurashi When They Cry Onikakushi. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye!